nother state. I'm trying to eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies was stuck in the hood. I just told them be safe in the state.
Welcome to the Black Miss Podcast. Welcome to the Black Miss Podcast. I am your host, Too Black. All right, continuing with our Black August series. The myth today is Black August is a celebration. Anybody that's familiar with the founding of Black August knows it's about commemorating, not celebrating political prisoners. And that is primarily because the struggle still continues. So we're not going to celebrate people in prison. Now, obviously, Black August is associated with a litany of revolutionary dates in August, where they talked about the Haitian Revolution or the Watts Rebellion, Marcus Garvey's birthday, the March on Washington, etc. Not that was necessarily revolutionary, but revolutionary or progressive events that happened within Black African history. But the primary goal is about political prisoners, Black political prisoners, and so it is a commemoration of their struggle, of their ongoing struggle. Even if we may celebrate portions of it, is a commemoration. That goes back to the founding of it in 1979, outside of California prisons, um, and on to today. So we're going to interview the people who listen or watch the show are very familiar with the Pendleton 2. Our defense committee is doing a fundraising campaign for their legal defense fund, really trying to tighten up on the legal front. So this first episode of this iteration is going to be an interview with Christopher Naeem Trotter, who is a political prisoner in Indiana, one of the Pendleton 2. And for those who may not be familiar with the Pendleton 2, I do want to briefly explain the case. Is in 1985, there was a uprising in Indiana, Pendleton Correctional Facility, at the time it was Indiana Reformatory. We've done episodes on this, so I will link those into the show notes so I don't drag this out. But essentially, John Balogun Cole and Christopher Naeem Trotter, who you'll be hearing today, there was a prisoner being beaten by the name of Lincoln Love by the guards inside the prison. These guards were ready to kill Lincoln Love. Naeem and Balogun went to see peacefully originally what was going on. They were attacked by the guards. This created an entire melee. They ended up having to take over the prison, a cell house in the prison to survive. They had to take hostages because the guards were going to kill them. No one died in this incident, right? Yet and still, even though they were able to save Lincoln Love's life by taking the attention away from him and putting it on them, and the fact that they even protected their hostages and they did not kill anyone, they both received collectively over 200 plus years, and they are still in prison today. Naeem, who you're going to hear today, only had 3 months left on his sentence at the time, so he did not have to even involve himself. This is a major sacrifice. Balogun only had 3 years and some change left, and they now are sitting on over 200 plus years. Right, so they won't be getting out of prison unless we fight for them. We learned that those guards were part of a KKK, Ku Klux Klan group, and that evidence was never heard in court. Yet and still, Naeem and Balogun spent, 20 and 30 years in solitary confinement. So please, give to that. But I definitely want to emphasize what the case is. And again, if you want to hear more, the committee's done many things. We've done documentary. We've done interviews on the show if you want to get deeper into that. So let me talk with him about Black August, about his case, about some political analysis in regards to prisons and political prisoners and such of that nature, to really show you that this is an ongoing struggle, right? That to really emphasize that point that Black August is not something that we celebrate, something we commemorate, because we have to continue to fight. So that's what we're going to be doing this week, and we should be talking to Balogun soon as well. And that will be that. I do want to shout out our patrons because y'all are very valuable and never want to forget y'all. So real quick before we get into this interview, the people who signed up, it looks like since this last episode with Eric Rogers, Matthew Watkins, David Worsley, Matum Gaunt, Zora Murph, Kofi Kumiya, and then Trey Peltier. So we had a decent amount of sign up. So definitely shout out to everybody that signed up on the Patreon for sure. Greatly appreciate that. I do want to say for this episode, for those who are listening, there's a link to the Pendleton tool because again, we really want to push the donations here. So I really want to push people who, whatever money you have, you can send money to the Pendleton tool defense fund on various ways. There's the Chuff link that you'll see, particularly for the folks in audio. If you are watching, there currently is, the bottom has both the Venmo and the Cash App that will go directly to the defense fund. And you can also, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can go to the Chuff link and donate, and your donation will be posted on the screen. But I really want to emphasize, please donate. We'll be doing some book raffles, probably either on the Patreon, on the channel formerly known as BPM, to give to give books away to raise money for the legal defense fund. So please donate anything you can. If you are a listener who had been looking to sign up for the Patreon, something of that nature, please give that money to the defense fund this month. Do not feel like we need that. We greatly appreciate it, but that's really all hands on deck right now. So again, I want to emphasize, please do that. If you can do anything at all, please do that. For $5, $10. If you got more money, if you got a big grant, let us know about that, or money we can use, whatever we can do to give money to the defense fund. So really want to emphasize that. Other than that, we're going to get into the interview. I'll let y'all hear Naeem. It's been a while since he's been on the program, so it's great to have him back. All right, peace. So if you don't mind, just giving for the people who don't know, a bit background of you and what led to your incarceration, not just your initial incarceration, obviously, but the charges that have left you in there for so long.
My name is Christopher Naeem Trotter. I'm a military vet. I served this country, but only you can't find out that this country didn't serve me. I was incarcerated for the charge of petty theft. First time ever been incarcerated in my life. I received the maximum sentence for a Class D felony of 4 years and was sent to a maximum security prison. That warehouses the most violent criminals. First of all, I feel that, with a charge of petty theft, I should have never seen the inside of a prison, never been locked up before. I should have got probation, and I hate to play into this, but I honestly feel that if I was a white individual, I wouldn't have never seen the inside of a prison with a petty theft charge.
Right.
That's the reality.
Right.
But nonetheless, I was sent to a maximum security prison. I had to take on a certain mindset. Either you're going to be predator or you're going to be prey. Had I been sent to a lower security facility, which my charge required, the chances of me actually being involved in a prison riot probably wouldn't have never happened.
And you were sent there you were sent there because of because you were in the military? Is that correct?
A lot to do with it because of my security.
Mm-hmm.
I was special forces. This country taught me to, at the end of the day, kill. They trained me to kill, and so I was like, "Hey, what am I doing here?" But that had a lot to do with it. They felt that I would be a threat to security at a lower facility, a lower level facility.
Do you think? I've never asked you this, but do you think that also would have been different if you were white? Not just the petty charge, but also if you were a ex special forces, a white man that was ex special forces. Do you think they still would have sent you to a maximum security prison? Yeah.
Well, I don't believe so. I might not even see the inside of a state court because they have veteran courts.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
I honestly don't believe that. And again, like I said from the start, I serve my country, but I don't feel my country served me. So I honestly believe that even if I would have been a white veteran, I would have never been sent to a maximum security prison that designed to warehouse your most violent criminals. I don't honestly feel that way.
Yeah.
Because the way the system is set up, the system is set up to create that superiority, inferiority, to create that illusion that white people are superior and black people are inferior,
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, if I have the same choices as a white person, same background, and we go to court with the same charges, most likely that white person would get probation while I go to prison. So
Right.
again, that's what plays into or what perpetuates that racist ideology of white supremacy, white superiority, white privilege, which, is what racism was designed to do, create the wedge.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it was designed to create a wedge between, black, white, brown, rich and poor, and why the system benefits from it. And then once they found out that I was at a max security prison, they said, well, we're going to send you to a lower level security prison. But they sent me to another max security prison.
Mm.
And again, when you're at these prisons that are designed to warehouse your most dangerous prisoners, you have to take on a certain mindset, and that mindset was either I'm going to do what I need to do to survive by any means necessary.
Right.
And I chose to do it in a self-defense manner. If somebody would do something to me, I have a right to defend myself, and I still believe that today that we have a right to defend ourselves by any means necessary.
Exactly.
And and which is a perfect example on February the 1st, 1985. The Pendleton 2, me and my comrade was where we were supposed to be. We went out of place. We were where we were supposed to be. And, racist prison guards took it upon themselves to handshackle a prisoner, cuffing, and beating for no other reason than they could. And that he was a black prisoner.
Right.
Our first resolution was to commit acts of violence. We didn't go there to commit violence. We went there to say, hey, y'all done this, getting the necessary medical attention that he needs, and let's find a way to air these grievances out. But we were attacked. At that point, when you're attacked, you have to defend yourself. But more so importantly, I swore an oath to defend this country against foreign and domestic terrorists. And those guards that were part of a clandestine organization called the Sons of Lights, which is the offspring of the Ku Klux Klan, were actually domestic terrorists.
Yeah.
They weren't just a group of bad guards. They were domestic terrorists.
Yeah. Why is that distinction important, that they're not just bad guards, but that they were terrorists or that they were in the Klan?
Because they were part of an organization that has a history in the United States of terrorizing black folks.
Right.
And that's very important for people to know. These were domestic terrorists, and I felt that we had every right within reason to defend ourselves against them and to defend the life of the prisoner that was being handcuffed and shackled. as I was saying, our first resolution wasn't to commit an act of violence. We defended ourselves, and we wanted to make sure that our comrade, Lincoln Love, was going to be defended because he had already been given an order to kill him. Prisoners were, vocalizing that they're trying to kill him. They were told to kill him by certain superior officers. And we went to defend ourselves and to save his life. And the point I want people to understand is this. We should have never been put in a position where we had to choose between our personal freedom and saving the life of a fellow human being.
And then speaking of your personal freedom, you only have to, you were about to say it. Go ahead.
Yeah. I had 3 months to go before I was, before I was going to be released back into society. And I was put in a position where I had to make a choice. Do I go home and take care of my ailing mother, take care of my daughter, or do I save the life of a fellow human being? I chose to save that life because it was the right thing to do. And also, I was raised to do the right thing. My mother and father always raised me that life is bigger than yourself. And in my heart of hearts, I knew that was the right thing to do.
What do you say to
as a result,
what do you say to people who, we're gonna get to the trial and the takeover, but what do you say to people who say you all were acting vindictively in this moment, and this wasn't about self-defense, this was about revenge because of how you've been treated inside the prison, and that you were out to kill the guards and hurt them, and what do you say to that?
what I say to people is that first and foremost, I came to prison for petty theft. And secondly, where we were supposed to be at, we wasn't out of place. Our first resolution wasn't to commit violence. We were defending ourselves because we were attacked first initially by prison guards that were trying to cover up their acts of violence. I've never been a violent person. I didn't come to prison for a violent crime. And the things that took place inside prison were something that we were trying to air in a peaceful manner. We were airing our grievances. We had filed grievances against the administration for the acts of deliberate brutality that were committed against Black prisoners by the Sons of Light. We went through channels to air these grievances in a peaceful manner. A lot of times, violence takes place spontaneously, but not before there's a build-up. When you no longer have avenues to address your grievances, the end result is violence. And they were denying us all of these avenues.
Right.
And sometimes all it takes is a spark to light a fire. And they were the sparks. They committed an act of violence that day, knowing that at some point
you have 1 minute remaining.
That at some point prisoners would say enough is enough. because it had built up to that point, not as a result of prisoners' actions, but as a result of their actions and their inactions to address those grievances.
Right.
So I say to people that may feel that we were just a bunch of prisoners running amok, is that we acted out of a sense of self-defense and a sense of moral consciousness. Even the judge in my case that vacated my sentence when I got resentenced, Judge Dudley, stated specifically,
Thank you for using GTL. Recording. Thank you for using GTL.
hello?
Yep. You can pick right up where you left off.
Yeah. And one of the things I really need people to know is this. Again, I had 3 months to go before my release to freedom. And my co-defendant, John Balagoon Cole, also didn't have a lengthy sentence. And neither one of us were in prison for violent crimes. And it's not like we woke up that morning and said, oh, let's go cause a riot and stab up some prison guards. No. I woke up that morning knowing that in a few months I would be able to go home, take care of my mother, be with my daughter that I've never seen before because she was born when I got incarcerated. I woke up that morning thinking about those things.
Right.
Not thinking about being involved in a prison riot, having to sacrifice everything that I love, just to help someone.
Right.
Those things were the furthest things from my mind that day. And it's been a hard pill to swallow. It's been a hard pill to swallow, but one thing I've never did is second guess myself. Because I feel in my heart of hearts it was the right thing to do. And like I've always said, if people would have intervened in the George Floyd situation, instead of just standing around, he would still be alive today, most likely.
Yep.
And I'm a true believer in that sometimes we have to sacrifice, and that was a sacrifice that was worth sacrificing.
Yes, can you I have a few questions about kind of what led to all of that, but if you don't mind just going ahead and finishing out. So you were attacked by the guards when you went to check on Lincoln Love. They attacked you first. You defended yourself. The goal was to kill Lincoln Love. Like you said, the quote was kill the son of a bitch. That was in the Michael Richardson deposition. And then the orders were effectively to kill you all as well, right? Once they began chasing you. So then once you fought them off, what happened next? Like once you initially fight off the guards, what do you do to find some kind of safety?
Well, initially, like you said, the order was also given to kill us.
Mm-hmm.
They wear white hats. They threw the hats up in the air. They would order the guards in the shot tried to shoot us, and which they did shoot at us. We were just fortunate. We were chased down by a snowplow that was trying to run us over. We were just fortunate to make it to the fair house. Where we were able to get inside the fair house and let prisoners out the cell. And one thing I want people to know is this. Our intentions was never at that point, to take over the prison. Our intentions were to seek refuge at that point. But the prison just happened to be taken over. That fair house anyway, jail fair house did. And And at that point, it was all about airing the grievances based on the conditions that existed inside the prison. To air the grievances of medical grievances, inadequate food, the inadequate conditions that prisoners were living up under, um, uh, the treatment of black prisoners by prison guards. So, it took a life of its own at that point. But one thing we did take the opportunity to do, and I want people to really understand this, is to organize the prisoners, to talk to the prisoners, to say, well, hey, this is what we're here for now. We're not here to create a lot of chaos. We're not here to participate in prisoners violence. We're not here for none of these things, Okay, everybody has grievances to air. Let's air these grievances. This was the only way we felt that we could save our lives, because had we just surrendered, which we probably would have, we knew they would kill us.
Mm.
And so we were able to air our grievances. We were able to negotiate grievances. We were able to put in our negotiating points with no physical reprisal against myself and my co-defendant, Cole. And we released the hostages unharmed. We treated them better than they treated us.
What were the grievances, if you don't mind sharing those?
Some of the grievances had to deal with the inadequate health care that we were receiving, which was non-existent, which wasn't preventative care. It was non-existent health care, inadequate diets. Prisoners were basically eating slop. We wanted to address that. We also wanted to address the conditions of the prisoners, how the conditions that we were living up under, the overcrowdedness. Also, one of the main points were the treatment by prison guards against certain prisoners, especially against black prisoners, And there were other grievances that I can't recall off the top of my head, but those were some of the main ones that we wanted to put focus on, And we had already had a federal lawsuit in, that were addressing some of the grievances that I had just mentioned. And again, at some point when, you had no other avenues to address your grievances, at the end, the result is, violence is bound to happen. And this was just an opportunity for prisoners to, again, to say enough is enough. Let's address these grievances so we can live in a more, human environment. And so that was something that came out of it too, that benefited, not just prisoners, but it benefited, staff too, in terms of putting the spotlight on not bad guards, but guards that were part of a domestic terrorist group, and being able to, weed those guards out.
Right. So you talked about establishing bonds, and I was talking to Balagoon the other day, and he was talking a bit about this too. But so it's like you said it was a spontaneous uprising in the sense that it was not planned, and but at the same time you all did have y'all did have relationships that were pre-established to where when that happened, you all loved each other and cared about each other enough to actually defend each other, and that doesn't happen at every prison, as I know more than I do. So what was it about those bonds that you all had established prior to 85 that gave you the courage, you and Balagoon, and even some of the others, like Minka, and who all went out to see what was going on. Like, what were those bonds that were established?
Those guys, a lot of us came from the same neighborhoods. A lot of us grew up together, and we knew each other, or we knew someone's family member. Uh, um, and also did in the same situations in prison. That's a bond in terms of unity. Us studying together, us working to better ourselves and better understand the system that we're in. At some point, when violence became so rampant and targeted against Black prisoners, we knew that we had to do something. We knew that we had to come together and form a self-defense committee. And that's something that we did. We made a silent oath to, not only defend ourselves, but to defend other prisoners against violence that was directed toward us from the administration. And that was part of that bond. Back then, you had more unity in prison than you do today. Prisoners cared about one another. Just like back in the 60s in communities. There was a village that raised a child, and it was the same thing in prison. We looked out for one another. And the thing was, it didn't matter if you were Black, white, brown. We all had a common goal, and that was to basically just do our time and maintain a sense of humanity and dignity as human beings. And you had a group of guards that were trying to rob us of that. Of that human dignity,
Right.
of that self-respect, of that right to be treated as human beings.
Right. Right. So when you say you swore an oath, was there an organization that you were part of?
Yeah, we built the organization. It was a self-defense organization called the Black Dragons. It wasn't an organization based on violence. It was an organization based on self-defense.
Right.
And this organization was based on not just self-defense, but also helping prisoners change the way they thought and acted. If a young prisoner came into prison, we would work with that prisoner, help that prisoner change his way of thinking from a lumping mentality, from a criminal mentality, into not just a revolutionary mentality, but get that person to see that, you could be a better person. You change your way of thinking, you change your way of acting.
Right.
What we wanted to do was get rid of that criminal mentality that prisoners were indoctrinated with out in society. And we wanted them to look and say, well, hey, if you know better, you can do better.
Right.
And we worked with the youths so they would, be able to have a sense of self-respect. You know what I'm saying? Reclaim their sense of humanity and dignity so they can get out of this belly of the beast, this prison system, return back to their respectable community and be an asset to that community instead of a liability. To be an asset to their family, to be fathers to their sons or daughters, or to be husbands to their wives, and that was our goal. It wasn't just about self-defense. It was about the uplifting of prisoners that we came in contact with,
Yeah, it sounds like you were doing the job that the prisons claimed they were supposed to do, in terms of rehabilitating people.
Exactly, and we're still doing it today. You know, we have a veteran mentorship class, and I deal with the youth every day. And it was all that's what it's about, mentoring these youth to come in here. The prison system is not designed to rehabilitate prisoners.
Mm.
You know, and I'm a perfect example of that because I've done everything. I've completed every program you could think of in prison, received awards, and I went to the clemency board, the parole board, and they told me I'd be better off in prison.
Mm.
But I thought prison was designed to rehabilitate you. So when you see a person that rehabilitates themselves, how can you tell that person that he's better off in prison?
Right.
And so it's up to us prisoners that care for our brothers that come into prison to try to reach one and teach one, to try to mentor them, to get them to see that there's a better way to live their lives, you know. But it starts in here, you know. The prison system is, they just, you know, throw them away. The court system throws them away. They give them hundreds of years, and then they come into the prison system, and the prison system throws them away. They put them in idle houses. You know, they don't give them jobs, you know. And what are these young prisoners supposed to do?
Right.
You know? And as a mentor, I'm humbled that I'm able to work with some of the prisoners and lead by example. You know, one thing I've learned that prisoners have a big mistrust, some of the younger prisoners, for their elders because they don't lead by example. And I'm glad that I'm able to reach them by doing such, you know, and gain their trust and respect. And so that's humbling for me. It's an honor that I done touched the lives of so many prisoners and have changed the lives of so many prisoners in here. And we're doing something that the administration, the prison administration, supposed to be doing but isn't doing.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not. No, that's definitely a very honorable thing because like you said, a lot of times people can just do their time and try to get out of there, but you know, the fact that y'all continue to reach out, you know, for people coming in there that don't know any better, that's definitely honorable. One more question on that. I know I've heard all of y'all talk about the colonial mentality, or you said the criminal mentality. Like, can you give people a better sense of what that is? Because I think, you know, I know what you mean by that, just having been around that and having spoken with you several times. But what, for people that may not understand like that mentality, what are you speaking about?
The criminal lumping mentality is a mentality that, you know, we can buy into. We can buy into it by being born into a situation of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we take on that mentality that the only way we can survive is by committing acts of criminality, selling drugs, robbing, stealing, you know, and we can take on that mindset that this is how we become successful.
Mm-hmm.
Or this is how we survive, you know, by any means necessary. You know, I'm doing this to feed my family. But when I tell people if the means ain't correct from the start, it can't be justified in the end.
Mm-hmm.
You can't justify selling drugs at the expense of killing 100 families just to provide for one.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Can you say that again? I definitely want to make sure I get that on record. You can't do what?
If the means aren't correct from the start, you can't justify it in the end. You can't justify selling drugs at the expense of killing 100 families just to feed one family. You can't justify that. The same way Israel, the Zionist state of Israel, can't justify killing thousands and thousands of Palestinians just to kill one Hamas terrorist. You can't justify that. Again, I'm a firm believer in that if the means are not correct from the start, you can't justify it in the end. And again, that's with anything that we do in life, any choices that we make in life. And the best example I can give, again, in terms of what's going on today in the world right now with the Zionist state of Israel and the Palestinian people, Israeli imperialist capitalist military cannot justify killing thousands and thousands and thousands of women and children at the expense of a few Hamas terrorists. It can't be justified in the end. There's no way, and there's a total lack of humanity right there. There's a lack of a moral compass right there when it comes to that type of the ends justify the means, and it's just not correct in certain situations. There's no way you can justify it.
Right.
And I just believe that when we have to sit back and come in these prisons with this criminal lumping mentality, that we have to go through a process of basically deprogramming ourselves and reprogramming ourselves to think in a different way. Because they say as man thinketh, so is he. And I believe that if we change our way of thinking, we change our way of behaving, of acting.
Right.
And what that takes is, people giving you the right information. You taking time out to do a lot of soul searching, reconcile any differences that one may have with himself, with others. Extending that forgiveness to others and to yourself, and trying to move past those things that are keeping you in that state of a mindset of criminality. And that's what we try to do with the youth that we mentor in here. We try to get them to change their way of thinking, and if you change your way of thinking, you change your way of behaving, of acting. So you can return back to your families, your communities, with a different type of mindset to be a productive a citizen of that community, to be a productive father to your children, a productive husband to your wives.
Right. You brought up Israel and Palestine, and you talked about Hamas. Do you think groups like Hamas or other Palestinian resistance groups are terrorists based upon their actions, or more so similar to the way Black Dragons becomes called like a criminal organization when that wasn't really their intention?
I think it's the Zionist state of Israel and other capitalist imperialist states that label people terrorists that are not a part of a certain type of structure. I believe the people of Hamas are fighting for freedom, and I believe that that there are organizations that has, that exists for the plight of Palestinian people. When you see that your government can't provide that type of resistance that's needed, sometimes people have to form that resistance group. And I believe that's what the Hamas did. They formed a group of resistance that wasn't beholden to the capitalist imperialist states that try to oppress the Palestinian people. And I don't see them as terrorists. What I do understand is this. The Palestinian people have legitimate issues. And when you don't resolve those issues in a meaningful way, at the end of the day, violence is bound. When you occupy another person's land, and you hold them prisoners on their land, you control the electricity, you control the water, you control everything about these people's daily lives. At some point, they're going to say enough is enough. And at some point, people are going to step up when you say, well, hey, I can't depend on this Palestinian government, this puppet government that's beholden to capitalist, imperialist entities. We can't depend on them, in order for us to gain our liberation and to address the grievances that need to be addressed. And it's ironic that it leads to violence, but that's what happens when you have no other avenues to address your grievances.
Right.
That's what happens.
Right. No, thanks for that. We were talking about Black August a little bit before we started recording. What does Black August mean to you? Like, how do you understand Black August?
Black August, what it means to me is a chance for us to pay homage, to salute those comrades, those brothers and sisters of the struggle that are unheard of, that the mainstream media never mentions this. Never mentioned. They don't mention George Jackson. They don't mention Jonathan Jackson, Sister Alcoa, Nat Turner, and countless other brothers and sisters that then sacrificed their lives for the struggle. And Black August is an opportunity for us to pay homage to those that the media don't talk about.
Right.
They would never mention the Pendleton coup. How these two courageous brothers went up against a white supremacist organization to save the life of another human being, and also to spark a wider political debate across the state of Indiana to raise the consciousness of prisoners, to organize prisoners. They would never mention those things right there. The mainstream media would never mention the Pendleton coup, but we recognize them in Black August. Just as well as we recognize George Jackson, who's responsible for a lot of the not only the consciousness in prison of prisoners changing their way of thinking, but also in society. Being able to put things in perspective for people to understand what type of capitalist imperialist state we live up under in this country.
Right. And you, I guess when we think of Black August, we're talking about how it's not as mainstream. Do you think that's a good thing that it's not as mainstream because it's not as watered down, maybe, or something else, or how do we advance it? Yeah.
It's a good thing that is not mainstream for the simple fact that there's certain information that you can't put a price tag on.
Mm-hmm.
That we can share with the masses. And if we allow certain people to become commercialized then it's trivialized, and then it takes away from the significance, the meaning of those events that took place throughout history.
Right.
You know, so I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing that it's not mainstream, but I believe it's upon each individual that knows anything about Black August to share that information with others. There's a Black August calendar that you might be able to get that has dates of certain heroes and sheroes that sacrificed their lives for the struggle, where we celebrate those days for them, and I think it's something that should be passed down, you know, from generation to generation, you know, through word of mouth, like the lessons, like we used to learn our lessons, you know, back in the days. Our grandfather told us this story. We told our sons that story, and I think we should continue that, which is something that's not really happening much of today. And I believe reason why, because for one, the generations are younger, the parents are younger, children having children, and we're just not passing those stories that are part of our history down to one another. And if we do pass those stories, then we take more pride in ourselves, and we're able to have that moral compass of what it means to be Black in America.
No, I agree, and I think even thinking about what you were saying earlier about the means to an end, how the means are trying to mainstream something to the point that it loses its meaning is not worth it in the end, right? Because if I want to make Black August so popular that I can then that by the time it is popular, we don't even see what Black August has basically disappeared at that point. Like that's not a good thing. So,
Yeah. And one of the examples I use is with Kwanzaa. At one time, Kwanzaa was very seldom heard of. You know, by Dr. Karinga, who was the reinventor of Kwanzaa. I believe Kwanzaa was originally created over in Africa. It was the celebration of the harvest. And it was a celebration that took place year round, not just for 7 days. But anyway, it was recreated, and then all of a sudden it was commercialized. You know, they commercialized Kwanzaa, and for a few years, you had your Hanukkah, then you had your Christmas, then you had your Kwanzaa. You know, and for those 7 days, they celebrated certain principles. But after it was trivialized for a few years, it died out. You know, it took away the meaning, and the true meaning is something that should be celebrated yearly, was reduced to 7 days.
Yeah, like a black. It's like a Black Christmas or something. Yeah.
Yes. You know, and I believe they just trivialized it to the point where now you barely sell a year of Kwanzaa. At one time, they commercialized it so much that it was, you know, you couldn't turn on the TV without seeing Kwanzaa around Christmas time. You know, the Black families sitting around with the 7 candles. You know, but now it's not existent. So what happened between then and now? You know. And you know, you trivialize it to the point where it has no meaning.
Right. No, that's a good comparison. Yeah, because and that's happened with Black History Month. I'd say even worse. Martin Luther King's birthday. So yeah, I think we should hold on to Black August and not necessarily try to mainstream it. I think this is a good way of doing it. Since we're talking about Black August, political prisoners, I know I've heard you define it many times, but we've been trying to rethink the definition or just challenge the definition here lately, because we think there's a way that people like Donald Trump or folks who are actually working against the people but might still be attacked because of ruling class rivalry or something, that will try to just say they're political prisoners, right? And I don't think you and Donald Trump have anything in common, right? So How do you make those distinctions of political prisoners?
Well, for one, let me say this. There's always been a debate about who's a political prisoner, who's not a political prisoner. And that debate goes on today. Some people will say the political prisoner is that person that was politically active in society. Those are the ones that constitute a prisoner, period, a political prisoner. But when they're politically active against the current, state in existence, the current capitalist imperialist state, and they're locked up and persecuted for those reasons. Then you have your debate where the political prisoner is also that prisoner that comes into prison and basically transform that lumping criminal mentality into a revolutionary mentality, or changes his way of thinking and becomes a political activist inside prison. And then as a result of his activism in prison, he's persecuted by the administration for maybe organizing a food strike because of inadequate food or diets, or he may organize a strike to protest against the inadequate health care treatment of prisoners. And so everything this prisoner does is his activism, being active inside the prison system, he's prosecuted for. He's sent to lock up. He's placed on idle. He can't get a prison job. And so we consider that person a political prisoner. And to me, my definition of a political prisoner is that prisoner, whether he's in here or he's out there, he's fighting against a corrupt capitalist imperialist system. He's fighting against a system that is designed to meet the needs of a few people and not the needs of the whole. And as a result of his activism, he's prosecuted. He's given trumped up charges. He's taken to court. He's evicted, sent to prison. In Donald Trump's case, he's not fighting against the state. He's not fighting against the current powers that be. He's not fighting against the current capitalist imperialist system. All he did was find ways to manipulate the system.
Right.
So I don't equate him I don't look at him as being a political prisoner. No more than I would look at Martha Stewart being a political prisoner.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Some of the other ones that went to prison for their own acts of corruption.
Right.
And so I don't look at him as being a political prisoner. That's because he was prosecuted for the state by his own corruption, especially when he's sitting around and committing acts of corruption. Not only, I don't see it right there.
No, I agree. I think if the definition gets too watered down to what we're talking to your point, then it opens the door for stuff like that. That's why I think it's important to clarify. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it is, because it has gotten watered down. I remember seeing him with the mug shot because he was convicted, as a result of his own, criminal activity, that somehow he's a political prisoner. No,
Yeah.
Because she didn't snitch. All she did was make a whole bunch of money off of inside trading.
Right. Like you say, it's still corruption. Yeah, it's just corruption. I said, like you said, it's still corruption that they're getting off on. Like, it's not like they're not fighting anything other than just getting caught for their own corruption. That's
Exactly. And there's nothing political about that.
no,
You know.
no, that's a ruling class rivalry that has nothing to do with us. Um, last, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It would be a difference if Donald Trump would commit class suicide.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Reprogram himself, commit a class suicide, and denounce the capitalist imperialist, system. You know what I'm saying? And started to speak out in that way, it would be a big difference. But he's not going to commit class suicide because he benefits from the very same capitalist imperialist structure that made him a rich man.
Right.
He's not giving that up.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a silly thing, but I'm glad you answered that because there are again, because things get watered down so much, there's just ways that we can fall into these confusing traps. My last kind of set of questions is about Westville Supermax, if you don't mind talking about that, because I feel like when we've talked before, we've heard more about the shoe, which I know all of these are terrible places, but Westville, I'll just admit I'm interested in because it seems like that was something that was built to contain a lot of the camaraderie and the movements the movement you were talking about in the 80s. So how do you view Westville, and then can you also talk about your experience in Westville?
Well, again, you're exactly right. Westville Supermax, at that particular time, they called it MCC, Mexican Control Complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
They called it MCC. It was modeled at the Pendleton Bay. It was actually designed for that purpose to repress any type of political movement that was taking place. And at that time, remind you, there was a political movement in the state of Indiana that had organized, educated prisoners to the point where it didn't matter who you were, black, white, there was a sense of unity. And we were all struggling for the same thing. Human dignity, to be treated decent, to have adequate health care, and among other things. And so they proliferated these lockup units, especially MCC, to take all the political, conscious-minded individuals out of the main populations, out of the general prison populations, right?
Right.
And it's the theory of if you cut off the head, you kill the body type, And so we're gonna take the heads of this political movement all out of the populations across the state of Indiana and put them in MCC. We're gonna isolate them in these units. So therefore, they have no true leadership out in the general population. Hopefully, we can infiltrate those populations with opportunistic individuals that don't care nothing about the well-being of other prisoners. We can let them run rapid. We can introduce drugs into that general prison population and other things that make them resort back to that same old criminal weapon behavior, And we isolate these prisoners. And so when they isolated us on MCC, conditions were extreme. It was total sensory deprivation, total isolation. They had hot and cold cells. The guards that was there were indoctrinated with a sense of us against them. They really had no real sense of humanity, and they were tyrants, total tyrants. It was a very oppressive environment, But even that type of environment couldn't kill the political mentality of prisoners that were down there. And it couldn't stop us from organizing ourselves against that oppressive maximum control complex unit, and which we did, you know. But it was a very oppressive environment. You know, they would put you. They had hot and cold cells, and the reason for the hot and cold cells, if you put somebody in a cold environment, most likely they're going to be in a place where they're trying to stay warm. You know, they're not going to be up at the door. You know, they're going to basically be in the bed trying to stay warm, cover up under their blankets.
Right.
To keep them immobile. You know what I'm saying? To keep them almost sedated, you know, with coldness. And then you had your hot cell. Your hot cell, if you're hot, you're constantly irritated, you're agitated, you know, and that was by design for them to irritate prisoners, to agitate prisoners, to have prisoners and rowdy, and so they could justify coming in and attacking them, you know.
Right.
And and also just to throw your whole biological metabolism off balance, you know, 3 weeks they put you in a cold cell, 3 weeks they move you to a hot cell, and it was constant back and forth, you know. And but those lockup units are some of the most extreme sensory deprivation units that you can imagine, and they're designed to break the will of an individual, you know. They're designed to break the will of an individual, and I would not wish that on my worst enemy. To be up under that type of sensory deprivation, that type of extreme isolation, up under that type of psychological and physical, emotional oppression. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And I only survived through my military training, being in uncomfortable situations, and by not willing to give in to what they wanted me to become, which was a monster.
Right.
You know, situations are designed to strip you of your human dignity, your humanity. Because if someone puts you in a cage and constantly treats you like an animal every day, comes in and poke at you, terrorizes you, eventually you will start to act like an animal. And so my refusal to surrender my sense of humanity played a great role in my surviving that type of psychological and physical and emotional oppression, along with a lot of other brothers who just refused to get into that they were having us subjected upon it. We refused to give in and surrender our humanity, and that's a big role, you know, because for a lot of us, that's all we have is that sense of humanity. Because this prison is designed to take away everything from you. It's designed to strip you of everything and leave you with nothing.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I know that was a lot you can reflect on. Are you familiar with the Marion Federal Penitentiary in Illinois? That I believe is that what Westville or the MCC was based on? Was that control unit? Is that correct?
It's similar to that, but it was more so based on, we have more association with Pelican Bay.
Okay.
Okay. The Marion lockdown in Chicago happened as a result of, I think it may have been certain riots taking place, a lot of guards getting killed, and then that prison being put on lockdown. You know, and the Marion facility kind of like warehouse some of your most what the state considered your notorious prisoners. I think at one time Jeff Fort was down in Marion. He's down in Colorado now, in the prison in Fort in Colorado. I think the person that wrote the book called Inside the Belly of the Beast, his name was Jack Abbott, which is a good book. I recommend people read it. Inside the Belly of the Beast by Jack Abbott was held in Marion. And so, but you can basically say that too with MCC or Westville was a matter of that prison in Pendleton Bay, because both of them exist of extreme isolation, sensory deprivation, basically total lockdown.
Right. So Pelican Bay, can you speak more about Pelican Bay then? Because
well, Pelican Bay was a shoe unit, okay? And that shoe unit had very torturous conditions. There's been reports where they would put prisoners in bathtubs of hot water and scald them to death. And this is true. Prisoners were held up under extreme isolation, sensory deprivation. A lot of brutality was committed against prisoners. For the most part, you had prisoners that were political prisoners that were active in the prison community, taking there. You had other prisoners that had no business being there. And one of the reasons is this. This is what people really have to understand. When they build these units, they publicize. It's a lot of publicity going around these units where they have to share this to society. For instance, Westville, Pelican Bay, these units are designed to hold the worst of the worst. The worstest prisoners you have in California, the worstest prisoners you have in the state of Indiana. They have to sell this to the public.
Right.
But at the time when they were selling this to the public, they spent all this money on Westville, which was MCC at that time. They had to sell it to the public because they spent so much money that this unit is designed to house the worst of the worst. But at that particular time, the state of Indiana didn't really have a prison population of the worst of the worst.
Right.
They had a prison population that was conscious, that had a political consciousness, but that doesn't make them the worst of the worst.
Right.
So
they had to
sell it.
Yeah, they had to sell it.
Fill it up with bodies.
Right.
They had to fill it up with bodies, right? And so what they did was they created ambiguous criteria for placement. Say, for instance, you've been in prison for 20 years, and when you first came into prison, a lot of people get in trouble. So the criteria for MCC was, we could place you in MCC based on your current period of incarceration. If you've been down 20 years and you got in trouble in your first year, you might have had an assault case, they can use that to justify placing you in MCC. And the reason they did that because they knew they didn't have a general population that was full of the worst, which would give them enough bodies to fill this unit up that they done spent millions and millions of dollars with and sold it to the public. So they had to create a criteria that would allow them to fill this unit up.
Right.
Now, when they placed me in the unit, it was based on your current period of incarceration. This period of incarceration was as a result of being convicted from the charges from the reformatory prison riot. And since that time, I never had a conduct report. So they couldn't justify placing me in MCC. And ultimately, I was able to get removed from that unit as a result of that. And we were able to change the criteria for placement. One of the things we tried to do was, we tried to abolish that unit. But what happens is the state brings in their puppets. Your ACLs,
ACLU.
Those so-called state puppets. And then they negotiate a compromise. They sell us out. They say, well, we're going to give them federal oversight for so many years. And we're going to file an injunction. They have to release all of these prisoners that don't really meet the criteria, and we're going to make certain cosmetic changes. You know, and that's what they do. They're basically reforms. You know, just like anything else. Just like when you have a police shooting, the first thing they want to do is talk about sensitivity training, body cams, but it doesn't stop the police shooting.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but that's what they do in those type of situations. You know, and like I said, those units are some of the most, oppressive units that a person could ever be confined to.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that. It just seems like with I don't know. I think the history that you all experienced and fought just does not get enough credit. It's because it's almost like because it didn't happen in the 60s and 70s. There's people out here that treat it like it didn't happen, even people who call themselves revolutionaries or historians. So I really think what y'all did was a continuation of the movements that people thought died off in the 70s. And I don't think y'all get enough credit for that. And then y'all went on hunger strikes and everything else.
Matter of fact, some of us were on hunger strikes for as long as 29 days.
Yeah.
And this is to change the conditions. And like I said, our end goal was to abolish the system. But when we can't do that, you know what I'm saying, we have to settle for certain reforms because, like I said, they send their puppets in there. They send the ACLU, the ULCs, and they send those other state entities in there, and they have to so-called take over and negotiate in our behalf because there's only so much we can do. You know what I'm saying? And the things that we do is we try to organize the prisoner population and we try to educate the prison population and we educate and then we try to find outside organizations that can help us with this. You know what I'm saying? But when you own these type of units, they understand it, so they disconnect us from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. They disconnect us from the outside. That's one of the biggest things when you're on these units, the disconnect. You know, so we're not able to let people out there know what. You know, I cannot see someone not being concerned with their loved one that's in prison if he's been oppressed, if he's been mistreated. I can't see that person not being concerned. But that person is not informed of that, of the going on, that person has no knowledge, don't know.
Right.
You know? And that's by design to disconnect us. Just like right today, everything in prison is designed to disconnect us from society. Now, it's people like you, Too Black.
You have 1 minute remaining.
IDOC that connects us, to give us a voice to let y'all know what's going on in here. So y'all can inform people out there.
Right.
You know, but otherwise we wouldn't have that connection.
Right.
And that's the bridge we have to build again. We have to rebuild it. We have to reconnect it because these people, these prison cracks are doing everything in their power to disconnect us from the outside world. Yeah, and I think we can't allow that disconnect. You know, and I, like I said, I'm just so thankful for organizations like IBCOY. I'm just so thankful for you Too Black, for the documentary on the Pendleton 2. I'm thankful for the abolishment movement, which plays a big role, which keeps us connected. And I'm just so thankful for those organizations that help us tell our stories and to have a voice and to lend their support. Because without them, we would be totally isolated in these prisons. And And people would never know what's going on with their loved ones, what about the conditions in here. We wouldn't have no support when we challenged the medical, the food, and the discrimination, the abuse. We wouldn't have no voice. You know, we wouldn't have no way of getting it out there to where we can hold these prison cracks accountable. You know, but when you have that support, we can hold them accountable. You know, it means everything to us to have that support where we can get our voices out there, you know, and then know we're not just alone in here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll say for me, it's been an honor. I mean, the goal is obviously to get y'all out, but it's been an honor and it's been life changing just to be a part of this. I mean, I don't just say that to say that, because I think, you know, we talk a lot about everything out here on the outside, but it changes you to have to actually hear this stuff directly from the source, like talking to you, talking to Balagoon, talking to others, and doing the work to get it out there, and then seeing how much people, even out here, have been conditioned to, you know, brush these things off and just focus on their own lives. And you know, it's a challenge every day, but I definitely, it's been an honor for me. I just want to say that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
When people realize that, you know, what affects one sometimes affects us all, you know?
Yeah.
And we have to have that sense of empathy. We have to restore that sense of empathy. We don't let society desensitize ourselves. You know, we're so desensitized against, you know, the incarcerated. You know what I'm saying? They've so much dehumanized us, criminalized us, to the point where we're still someone's son, daughter, brother, sister, husband, and wife. And people in society have a tendency to forget that, even when it comes to their own family members.
Yeah.
Because society has them believe that this person is a bad person. You know?
Yeah.
And we have to stop letting society tell the story. Because if they tell the story, they're going to paint us as criminals, as monsters, in the most negative light as possible. We have to tell our own story, and we need people to tell these stories.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the only way that we can be heard or seen differently.
Yeah.
Because I'm believer that if you don't tell your story, someone else will. And if we let these people tell their story, if we let the people tell the story of the Pendleton crew, they're going to paint us as violent monsters.
Yep. Yep.
You know? And that's why I'm glad we have people like you two, Black, IDC on Watch, Brother Ben, people that's part of the abolishment movement to help us tell our story. Because there's two sides to every story.
Yeah.
But often that other side is never told.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about the documentary. The Pendleton 2 documentary tells the story that was untold.
Yep.
You know? And it's a shame. Can a jury convict us of something if they were never able to hear the whole truth? They were kept from hearing the whole truth, but yet still they would come up with a guilty verdict.
Yeah. And then
Yeah, go ahead.
no, and then like you said, it was an all white jury, and like you said, they don't want heard about the Klan or any of that. But it's just, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Y'all never got a fair trial. You know, it's never been, and you know, like I was dealing with a case. I was helping somebody out of Missouri, and this brother on death row, name's Marcellus Khalifa Williams, and he quick story. He didn't do it. The DNA evidence showed he didn't do it, but the state prosecutor or the state's attorney would not allow that evidence into court. Right? Like
Right.
it's just similar. Like, and I mean, this was definitively he did not do it. The DNA shows it, but they just won't allow it into court. So it's amazing how much everybody could know about a case, but the jury never has a chance to legally hear the real argument because, you know, yeah, they just hold it out.
Just imagine if the jury would have been able to hear the testimony of Officer Richardson, a person that was actually there. And he would have testified, what do you want us to do with Lincoln Love? And he would have said, the lieutenant said, kill the son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
And why did y'all do it? What was the reason for y'all doing it? You know, who was the perpetrators of these crimes?
Right.
You know, who are the sons of light? You know?
Right.
When he would have went and told them, I complained about these people. I complained about this clean organization. There was an umbrella of the Ku Klux Klan. I complained about them.
Right.
When the jury said it, he heard him testify, oh, they came to my hospital bed and told me I better not say nothing.
They did come to his hospital bed? I didn't know about that one. Yeah. Mm.
The Richardson's hospital bed and told him not to say nothing.
How did you hear that? How did that get back to you?
There's a statement somewhere. I don't have it right now, but there's a statement somewhere that was taken when he was at his hospital bed. Now, Dr. Gordon might still have that statement. It was part of the investigation statement, but that's a statement, that's a fact. They actually came to that man when he was in the hospital and told him not to testify. Now, it might be somewhere still in the transcripts, too.
In the deposition or in the trial transcript?
His witness deposition somewhere, too, where he might have spoke about it. But he was the one that actually spoke about it, Richardson, how they came to him. And told him not to testify.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up because I didn't know about that part.
Came to his hospital bed.
Okay.
Told him to keep his mouth shut.
So this is after he did the deposition?
It might have been right before he did the deposition because they had already knew that he had already complained.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So they came to his bedside, hey, don't you,
So it sounds like he spoke on it anyway.
Yeah, he did. They try to make him not, it should be easy to find. Next time you talk about it, go ahead and find a room about it. Because they don't want him to say nothing, period.
Yeah, I read through that, but maybe my eyes got tired one day and I didn't see that part. But
they actually came to his hospital bed. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff missing around here, you know?
Yeah.
That people didn't really pay attention to, you know?
Yeah. No, I'll look into that one. Other than that, thanks for this talk. Like, it's been enlightening as always.
okay. Fresh out the plane in a whole nother state. I'm tryna eat down a whole nother plate. Seem like my homies was stuck in the hood. I just